We have 22 days left before the election, and we're running at full speed 7 days a week. We feel like we have really good momentum. We have a huge grassroots network, and we've been manning phones, knocking on doors, and raising money. And so I can tell you that we've raised, to this point, about $1.6 million, with almost 87% of that money coming here from within the state of Indiana and its districts. And just in the past couple of months, we've picked up the endorsements of the Indiana and the U.S. Chamber, the Farm Bureau, the NRA, the National Federation of Independent Business, and folks like that have stood with us before at the State House and like-minded people. So we are working away from sunup to sundown.
All right, well, very good. I want to talk about some of the issues of the campaign, and undoubtedly the main focus of most voters this election year has been the economy and jobs. What can be done to foster economic growth?
Well, I think, that we're hearing the same thing. We've been doing a Main Street Jobs tour, and we've been in companies all over the 2nd District, and I can tell you that whether you're talking to a mom-and-pop company or talking to a large manufacturer in Elkhart, the message has been the same, which is to bring stability to the economy to the federal level. And I would contend that no matter what situation you're in that kind of profile, that we do what we did in the state of Indiana, which is to balance our budget, which is to go through and shrink the size of the government that we have. And at the federal level, for sure, looking at ratcheting back the debt. Every one of us bears an unbelievable $50,000 debt. And then also to ratchet back some of the regulations that are keeping private companies from hiring today, including the full repeal of Obamacare.
You didn't mention anything about tax cuts, and that's been one of the proposals. We've been hearing a lot about the fiscal cliff, and that would, of course, include rolling back the Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003. Where do you stand on that idea?
I support the Bush tax cuts, actually, and I don't think anybody should be raising taxes on anybody in this economy, and you would not see me supporting a tax increase on anybody. I think that for the amount of time that we've spent with Hoosier CEOs and folks that own small business, a lot of these small businessmen get caught in the concept of what happens with folks that have their own companies and file appropriate taxes to reflect such. And, for the companies that we've talked to, they're sitting here with the most uncertainty they've ever had in their lives. They're sitting on money. They're not hiring. They're not expanding. And I would not support raising taxes on anybody at this point.
Okay. I've seen some ad campaigns you've been running with your mother. I believe her name is Martha. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, when we go through grocery stores at this point, people are coming up to have their picture taken with Martha. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I noticed in those you promised that you're never going to support cuts for Social Security and Medicare. And your Democratic opponent, Mr. Mullen, argues that you're walking away from positions you've supported in the past, specifically calling for the privatization of Social Security. Do you support privatizing Social Security?
No, I don't, and I've been very clear, and I've been clear on this issue for a long time, that, I am on the watch for my mom's generation, always have been, and, one of the reasons that we have been so clear about this is I just went through the process with my mom as she signed up for Medicare and as she officially left her job and retired, and, I've been making the contention that it's my generation that has got to take care of our parents' generation that built this land and built this nation and infrastructure. And I think that when we get our financial house in order at the federal level, starting with balancing the budget and moving back the debt, I think that we see loud and clear exactly what the battle is that's ahead. But I am going to stand with my mom's generation, and we owe them every cent that they've invested. Okay.
Would you call that a change in position for you? Because you did say in a 2010 interview on Tea Party Talk Indiana that you thought privatization might be the way to go.
No, I will not support any cuts to Social Security or Medicare.
Okay, that's different than privatizing it, however. I'll get to Medicare in a moment. On Social Security, you're saying you would not support privatizing it.
I will not support any cuts to Social Security whatsoever, Michael.
Okay. Cuts and privatization being two separate things, or is your mind still open on possibly privatizing Social Security, wherein we let people keep some of their own money to put it perhaps in the stock market or an IRA or something along that line?
I've been really clear. I'm not supporting any cuts to Social Security.
Okay.
And Michael, let me just go further and say, I believe at the federal level, the only way we're going to see light on these issues and actually see some kind of a solution is that we put a bipartisan group of people, a committee together, and I would love to be on that committee to come up with bipartisan reform. Otherwise, it's simply not going to happen. We watched for 4 years these two parties and the isolation that has come with both of these parties. And I can tell you that as a legislator in the state of Indiana, I have a 75% voting record across the aisle of Democrats on huge key issues of reform that have come down in our state in the 6 years that I was at the State House. It is very doable. I think we have a story to tell from the Hoosier state, and I think that is the story that I want to take to Washington. And I can tell you that, in the interest of Medicare, Obamacare is the issue that's going to cut $700 billion out of Medicare, and that's one of the reasons why I'm standing for the entire repeal of Obamacare, because of the devastating effects on Medicare. But as far as a long-term solution, it's going to be a bipartisan group of people.
Okay. Republican vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan includes the same amount of cuts for Medicare, or savings he would call them, in his proposed budget. Would you support the so-called Ryan budget if it included those $700 billion cuts in Medicare you just referenced?
Well, again, I don't think there's going to be absolutely anything other than a bipartisan group of people that's going to form a solution that is going to work in this country. And I would tell you, as far as the Romney-Ryan ticket, I think it provides Americans with two very different leadership options for the next 4 years. And I think Americans are either going to want to stay on this dismal path of slow job growth and bigger government, or they're going to vote for real change. But when we're looking at solutions inside of there specifically for Social Security and Medicare, it's going to come from a bipartisan group of people. And I would love to be there as well, casting my vote to repeal Obamacare, because of the $700 billion cut to Medicare that's inside of it.
Earlier, you and I got caught in a little semantics between cuts to Social Security versus privatization of Social Security, and you have vouched not to cut Medicare. Would you support a voucher system where we give seniors a voucher where they're supposed to go out in the open market and then buy some of their own insurance?
Yeah, again, Michael, none of this stuff is going to be reality unless we have a bipartisan group of people and we have bipartisan reform. From the position I'm sitting right now, as well as the 35,000-foot position, looking over this entire spectrum of the issues and the needs in this nation, we are not going to get reform of any kind unless we sit down together. And I'm going to concentrate my efforts on making sure that we have a bipartisan group of people that are looking at reform, and I want to be one of those.
Okay, I would argue that we're not going to get a voucher system if we have a bipartisan form of government in our nation's capital, because the Ryan budget passed the House, it was blocked in the Senate. Let's say Republicans had control of both houses and they wanted to pass a Medicare voucher system. Could you support that?
Well, again, I think there's going to be a bipartisan group of people. I really do, Michael, and I guess the reason I believe that is because I think the American electorate is far more educated as they sit at the table right now, and we're hearing what Americans want done at the federal level more than anything else. They want people to sit down together. They want them to work together, and I think that what we're going to see, even as a result of this election, is some accountability and transparency that the American people are going to hold for the people that they're electing.
Okay.
So, and I can't speculate on these huge issues, Michael. I'm not even there, and we are laser focused on getting across the finish line on November 6th. But I can tell you, I'm resolute in the issue of having bipartisan reform.
Okay, I understand you're not there yet, but certainly these are the issues that are being talked about nationally and locally, and I think folks want to know where you stand on the issues before they cast a vote, who they're going to send to represent them.
Oh, I agree, and I've been very consistent on the fact when it comes to Social Security and Medicare that I will stand on the full repeal of Obamacare and will not support any cuts to Social Security and Medicare, and that the solution is going to come from bipartisan reform, and the nation has got to be able to see that.
I spoke to your Democratic opponent yesterday, Mr. Mullen, and I ended the interview the same way I'm going to end it with you here. Why don't you give me your best 30 or 40 seconds on why you think voters in the 2nd District should choose you to represent them in Congress?
Great. Well, I appreciate it. I can tell you that, I'm an independent voice in taking common sense values and solutions to Washington. I have a 75% voting record that is tangible, not political rhetoric. It's actually votes that were cast for jobs in the state of Indiana. Working across the aisle 75% of the time with Republican and Democratic bills being produced. And I believe that with the uncertainty in Washington and the things that we hear from people who want jobs and from private companies that want to hire, that we have a three-pronged approach, is to do exactly what we did in the state of Indiana, which is to balance the budget, ratchet back the debt off of individual Americans, ratchet back regulations so private companies can hire, and the complete repeal of Obamacare, and start over with a program that the Americans support that doesn't stand between the people and their doctors. And I can tell you that I believe America's greatest days are ahead. I really do believe that we can turn the corner, we can produce jobs, we can build a safe environment in the economy where people will again invest, and that we can turn this around and we can do it together. I've done it in the state of Indiana. I know what it's like to cast tough votes, and I look forward to the trust of the Hoosiers in the 2nd District to do exactly in Washington what we've done here, and we're one of the leaders in the country.
Well, I thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Michael. See you.
Bye-bye.